Remember the feeling of watching Infinity War for the first time? The dread, the tension, the genuine fear that any of your favorite heroes could be next. That feeling of real stakes, that sense of danger, is what made the Infinity Saga so compelling. But let's be honest, since Endgame, has anything in the MCU really made you feel that way again? It feels like Marvel, in its post-Endgame era, has lost its sense of danger, and today we're going to break down why. Before we dive in, let's go back to what made the early phases so special. From the very first Iron Man, the threats felt personal and grounded. Tony Stark's life was constantly on the line. In Captain America, the Winter Soldier, the enemy was an insidious force that had infiltrated the very organization our heroes trusted. The stakes weren't just about saving the world. They were about survival, about ideological clashes, and about personal loss. When Quicksilver died in Age of Ultron, it was a shock. It established that even the heroes weren't completely safe. It was a brutal but necessary reminder of the risks involved. This all culminated in Infinity War, the peak of Marvel's risk-taking. Thanos wasn't just a generic bad guy. He was an unstoppable force of nature with a clear, terrifying goal. And he won. The snap was a defining moment in cinematic history precisely because it felt so final, so devastating. It created a level of suspense that left us hanging for an entire year. Then came Endgame. It was the perfect conclusion, a cathartic release that masterfully tied up a decade's worth of storytelling. The deaths of Black Widow and Iron Man were heartbreaking because they were earned. They were the ultimate sacrifices that gave meaning to their entire character arcs. The saga ended, the universe was saved, and we all breathed a collective sigh of relief. But here's the problem. What do you do after you've reached the summit? The answer, it seems, has been to play it safe. Phase 4, and now the beginning of Phase 5, has felt like a collection of disconnected side quests rather than a cohesive journey towards a new, terrifying threat. Let's look at the projects we've gotten. WandaVision was a brilliant character study, but the primary conflict was internal, a manifestation of grief. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier dealt with legacy and social issues, with the Flag Smashers being more of a philosophical threat than a physical one. Loki introduced the concept of the multiverse and Kang the Conqueror, but it did so in a way that was more intellectual than visceral. We were told Kang was a huge threat, but we didn't really feel it in our bones. He Who Remains was more of a quirky, eccentric gatekeeper than a terrifying villain. This brings us to one of the biggest issues, the multiverse. On paper, the multiverse should exponentially increase the stakes. Infinite worlds mean infinite threats. But in practice, it's had the opposite effect. It's become a narrative safety net. If a character dies, well, there's a variant of them in another universe. We saw this with Gamora. Her poignant death in Infinity War was completely undone by bringing back a past version of her, who has no memory of her journey with the Guardians. It cheapens the original sacrifice. Loki's death in Infinity War was a powerful moment, only for him to be immediately brought back in his own series. The multiverse introduces a get-out-of-jail-free card that fundamentally undermines the permanence of consequences. If death isn't the end, what are we really afraid of? The villains have also suffered a noticeable downgrade. After Thanos, a villain who was both physically imposing and ideologically complex, the new big bads have felt underwhelming. Taskmaster and Black Widow was a silent, underutilized henchman. The Deviants and Eternals were generic CGI monsters with no personality. Even Kang and Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, who was hyped up to be the next Thanos, was defeated by Ant-Man. No offense to Scott Lang, but it is a bit of a credibility killer for your universe-ending threat to be taken down in his very first major appearance. We are told he is a menace, that countless versions of him have conquered entire timelines, but we don't see it. We're told, not shown. Compare that to our introduction to Thanos. We saw him effortlessly defeat the Hulk, kill Loki, and dismantle Thor's entire ship within the first 10 minutes of Infinity War. We didn't need exposition. We felt his power, Another contributing factor is the tone. Many of the recent Marvel projects have leaned heavily into comedy. While humor has always been a part of the MCU's DNA, it's now often used to undercut moments of genuine tension. Thor: Love and Thunder is a prime example. Gore the God Butcher, a character who is absolutely terrifying in the comics, was largely defamed by a script that prioritized jokes over dread. Moments that should have been horrifying or emotionally resonant were immediately followed by a gag, preventing the audience from ever truly feeling the weight of the situation. This over-reliance on quips and lightheartedness creates a tonal imbalance, making it hard to take any threat seriously. When everything is a joke, nothing is a stake. It's also about the scale. The Infinity Saga built its stakes gradually. It started with a man in a cave and ended with a battle for the fate of all existence. The current multiverse saga, however, started with universe-ending stakes right out of the gate. In Loki, when every other project involves the potential collapse of reality, it creates a sense of fatigue. If the multiverse is always in peril, the threat loses its impact. It becomes background noise. We haven't had the smaller, more personal stories to ground us and make us care about the world that's supposedly in danger. We're missing the street-level heroes and their struggles, the stories that remind us what they're fighting for in the first place. So, how can Marvel get its groove back? How can it recapture that sense of danger? First, it needs to reestablish consequences. Death needs to mean something again. Sacrifices need to be permanent. The multiverse can still be a tool for interesting stories, but it can't be a reset button that negates all emotional investment. They need to commit to the stakes they set up. If a character dies, let them stay dead. Let their legacy be their impact on the characters who survive. Second, they need to build their villains better. We need to see why the new big bad is a threat, not just be told about it. Give them a win. Let them be truly terrifying and ruthless. A hero is only as great as the villain they overcome. We need another villain who makes us feel that pit in our stomach, the way Thanos did. We need to feel like our heroes might actually lose. Finally, Marvel needs to find a better balance between humor and drama. The jokes are great, but they need to serve the story, not detract from it. Let the serious moments breathe. Allow the audience to feel fear, sadness, and tension without immediately diffusing it with a one-liner. The best Marvel moments are the ones that balance heart, humor, and high stakes. Think of the banter on the ship in the first Avengers, followed by the genuine terror of the Chitauri invasion. That's the magic formula. The potential is still there. The MCU has a vast roster of incredible characters and a universe ripe with storytelling possibilities. But to move forward successfully, it needs to look back at what made it a global phenomenon in the first place. The ability to make us care, to make us worry, and to make us feel like something was truly on the line. The age of heroes is most compelling when it's also an age of danger. What do you think? Has the MCU lost its edge since Endgame? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content. Thanks for watching.